Greetings and welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of UC Weekly News. I'm David Danto, and I have Dave Michels with me again. We're
I'm
going to
David
be
Michels.
your Dave. It's Dave and David. It's the Dave
This
and
is our
David.
first video together this year, so we have to say Happy New Year.
We do have to. We're allowed one Happy New Year as long as it's still January. If we'd done the first one in February or March, we're not
Because I
allowed.
know everyone watching has been waiting for our first video where we would say Happy New Year. It only took us, most of the month, but Happy New Year, yes.
Well, it took us most of the month. I'm still catching my breath over CES. CES is a monster of a show with a lot of things going on, and I know people have been watching our coverage and the analyst report we had on last week. And now, just when I've caught my breath and I'm feeling relaxed and I need a haircut and everything else, we're now going to be planning on going to Barcelona next week.
Well, wait a minute. If you're going to mention CES before we get to the main topic, I just got to say my CES post is almost done, and I like the way we tag team this. You went in person and waited in all the taxi lines and fought through all the crowds and had a tough time waiting, trying to find restrooms, all that stuff. I attended CES from afar and read a bunch of stuff, and so I think our joint team coverage is going to be very thorough, and mine's just about to post.
I think that's great. And I'm going to even amplify that because when I talk to people about what I do at CES, if there is streaming coverage of it, I don't go. I don't care how big and exciting as it is. If someone can watch it online later, including me, I'd rather use my time there for things that I couldn't. And we found some really interesting things and we covered it. So yes, I think we did good joint coverage on that. And now, breaking all of those rules, we're going to be in Barcelona together at Integrated
No,
Systems
it's not
Europe,
really breaking all
ISE.
those rules because ISE is a very, the importance of this show for people in the meeting space has been, just doing this thing for years now, and it just and now with Enterprise Connect kind of pivoting and changing and whatnot, and going through a kind of a rebirth. I think it's becoming even more of I would say it's the biggest show of the year for meetings. What would you say?
Yeah, no, I would agree. And we had talked a couple of years ago about how it eclipsed the Infocom, which was the larger parent. But now you've got a lot more people in the US going to Europe. You've got all of the European and the Asians going there. It's an enormous show that combines the traditional CEDIA audience with the traditional Infocom audience. Both organizations, CEDIA and Avixa, put it on together. Mike Blackman does a great job. It is huge. It's, I forget what, 15 halls, 30 halls, some, 3 zip codes. It's an enormous show.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of
and
time.
quite honestly, this would be a tough show. Well, we're making a dent here, the two of us, but this would be a tough show to attend from afar because it's such a big show that if you Google it and look for stuff, you're only going to find the Las Vegas type sign or the New York Times Square type of signs. You're going to find all these giant displays and all this stuff. You're not, the meetings thing is just, 1 or 2 halls of this giant show. And so we're fixing that. We're making ISE significant for the enterprise conferencing audience that can't attend.
And we are doing our pick hits again for a second year. Oh, Dave, why don't you tell everybody what pick hits is in your mind?
I got to give you credit here, Mr. Danto. You created pick hits, and it's been changing and morphing and maturing. And I'm really beginning to like what pick hits is. And so this year we're introducing it as the Pick Hits Showcase. And quite honestly, it's a promotional thing, right? The shows are so big, and so many people can't attend them. And there's so many announcements that we've created this Pick Hits thing where we are giving extra attention to and profiling and highlighting via our video channels and all our social channels certain products, and so I think it's fantastic. I love it, and I think we're covering and telling stories in the Pick Hits format that wouldn't be loud enough on their own. So I think it's great the way it's maturing.
And these are manufacturers and products and solutions that we're actually pretty proud of, that we think are really going to make an impact in the market. So we're really glad to bring them to you. One of the other interesting things about ISE is that a lot of exhibitors aren't saving their announcements for the show anymore. I would say
that's
probably
an interesting new development because when I was young, you held your announcements for the actual event. And I never really understood that. In other events like Enterprise Connect, there's just so many announcements that things get drowned out. So I actually think it makes sense to drop them a little early so people like you and I can start verbalizing and
Yeah, and we're
socializing
going to
these
go through
things.
a list right now. There are a number of companies that have reached out to us and told us either hints of what's coming on or actually gave us some pre-briefings, but then that have actually made their public announcements about what their products are. So we're not breaking any news here today, but let's go through what some of these things are and give you some opinions of them. And these are in alphabetical order, no other particular reason. Let's start with audio codes. We had a wonderful conversation with the team from Audio Codes the other day. I know they're holding some of their announcements for the show, but they're going to be focusing a lot more on the breadth of their portfolio, in terms of telephony and meetings and everything else. They've got
I
a pretty wide gamut.
I wish we hadn't started with audio codes because I cannot remember how much of their stuff was public and pre-announced and not announced. So I'm just going to be a little vague here, but I'm going to say that their story is getting very broad. Their stories include Teams and Zoom now, and their stories include, voice, video, and contact center. I don't think they'll have contact center at ISE, but I can tell you, I'm actually doing a piece right now, a media post on one of their contact center stories. And the point that I want to make here is that Audio Codes is really playing it up. I mean, they're doing some great stuff. And we've talked before about this. They're also doubling down on the MDEP stuff for Microsoft, which is, I think, going to be really interesting in Barcelona.
And I'm going to correct only one thing that you said, or modify one thing that you said. You said that their Teams and Zoom. Their Teams in Zoom and WebEx, which, when I heard it, it knocked my chair back about 20 feet. And they'll explain to you and we'll explain the qualifiers, but they've got some devices out there that will do all three. So really
Yep.
interesting stuff coming from them. Going in alphabetical order, the next one is Crestron, which spent some time.
They already had a dog and pony show.
Yes, they had an online show where they launched three new classifications of products. They have a
This
new
is like CES, where every vendor they didn't go to CES, they just did the next door hotel. Yeah, Crestron had their own big announcement, their own venue, and yeah, some really good stuff.
Yeah, and it was more than just Crestron's latest box that does X or Crestron's latest, adaptation that does this thing. They did have that. They had some slightly different camera setups for their automated camera system, but they launched the three new classes of products to take them forward, including an MDEP scheduling and touch panel, which was actually very interesting. So if you haven't figured it out between the lines of all the things we're saying, ISE is going to turn out to be another MDEP heavy show, which is another reason why Microsoft is going to be there. And we'll be meeting with the MDEP team and getting them on video as well to get their opinions as to what's going on. But yeah, that was a really interesting call out by Crestron.
The next one in alphabetical order is Cisco, but Cisco's a little old school here. I don't think they've announced anything. I haven't heard anything. Have you heard anything?
No, they obviously they've clued us in on some of the things that are going to be happening, but they would not release product specifics or anything else in
They
advance.
did confirm they have announcements. They did say they
Yes.
will have announcements. And honestly, Cisco is really nailing it lately. And so I would imagine they're going to have some good device announcements at this event. And
Yeah.
another reason why I think there might be some big news out of Cisco is because the following week is Cisco Live in Europe. And so I think that they're going to hit two shows with some announcement of some device announcement. So we can imagine stuff. Normally we can't imagine stuff because we're under NDA, but because we're not under NDA with Cisco, they haven't told us anything. I'm going to say they're going to come out with chocolate a chocolate terminal that you can touch a touch screen and have video meetings with, and you can eat it. That's my official prediction.
Well, I'm going to take my prediction back a little bit closer to earth here, but if we recall WebEx1 made a very big deal at WebEx1. Cisco made a very big deal about announcing that they're going to have MDEP capable products. And in the conversation that I had with Rich Bays and Juha Kuzmonen at Microsoft, they made the point that Cisco is not the kind of company that's going to announce a compatibility and then not have a quick product following up. There have been a lot of people that have been talking about, oh yeah, we're on board with MDEP, and then they don't have anything. So my expectation is that's going to come to fruition.
That's a pretty safe bet, I think, because what they said at WebEx1 was this is the first time we're making an announcement without a device. So yeah, device has to follow. This would be the perfect time and place to have that device. And remember, they would get to show it here, they would get to show it at Cisco Live, and they would get to show it at Enterprise Connect the following month or 2 months away.
Yep.
I think it's a pretty good prediction. Good job there.
And then going down our little list here, which is not, by the way, everyone, it's just a list of announcements that we put together before the show. You have a straddle the line company, Jabra, a division of GN, made some announcements early and are holding some announcements for the first day of the show. They're going to be doing a live stream from the show floor Tuesday with their video announcements, but they've already announced their new products, their Evolve 3 boomless headsets. They've got a couple
Yeah,
of
so they came out with their headset, which of course, I always associate the Jabra with the headsets, but their story at ISE keeps moving more and more into that video realm. And they were one of the early ones, as I recall you saying in your MDEP research, that they were one of the first with the MDEP stuff. So I would imagine, that they're going to have some pretty good MDEP related video room type of stuff.
I think that's a good bet, but I don't want to minimize the fact that they've now come up with an over-ear and an on-ear version of their Evolve 3 wireless headsets, boomless. They're really proud of them. So, they always go back to their roots for their
I want to find
logo.
out more about their because they used to make consumer earbuds. They stopped making the consumer earbuds, but they still have business earbuds, and I want to find out more about those. I don't know if they'll have them there at ISE or not, but I'd like to find out more about those.
We have some announcements already out from Logitech for Business,
Yep.
which is a team that's really moving forward. We talk quite a bit in this industry, and I've talked and written quite a bit about how there are so many companies letting people go and workforce reductions and the K-shaped economy that you wrote about and everything else. But Logitech is one of a couple of companies in our space that's growing and hiring like crazy. They've already told us that they want to double the size of their business in the next year. So they've already come out with two new cameras in their Rally camera line, one which is an optical plus digital and one which is a digital only, which you coined essentially said it can be recessed in the wall. It looks like a sideways light switch.
Yeah, it's actually very clever. I think they nailed it on this one. I love the concept of, we've been arguing back and forth. You and I have been arguing back and forth about optical versus digital, and so the obvious answer is, well, hey, why not both? And I think that's going to be the trend because other brands have already done that, and I expect more brands to do that. And so I think that makes a lot of sense. And I really like the way Logitech design these to go on a wall or in a wall. Very clever.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and we think that that's going to be a real good mover for the show. The other thing is, I don't know, do you remember these growing up in the U.S. Razzles? Remember we used to talk about how is Razzles a candy? Is Razzles a gum? And by the way, I'm going to bring these to ISE. So if anybody wants some Razzles, come see me. We'll talk about these more then. Neat came out, which is another company that's growing like gangbusters and hiring and doing amazing things. Neat came out with its Board 32. And is it a huddle room device? Is it a personal device? Is it a candy? Is it a gum? We don't know. It's a really interesting and exciting product and an interesting and exciting announcement. Launched a couple of months ago, but they're going to first show it at ISE. They're going to have the product there, along with the announcement they made last week that they are now going to be the only people that are Google Meet compatible in their video bar line, which is interesting. And I've written about this in that they're running Microsoft Teams, so they've committed to being on MDEP, but they're going to be running Google Meet on the same bar, obviously after a reboot or whatever is required. And that can't be on Microsoft Teams because Google won't allow that. So they're going to be shipping a bar with two OS images, which will boot one OS or the other one depending upon what you want. So it's really using engineering to solve a problem, which is something that's really unique and interesting in the
I,
industry.
I, I love watching Neat. I think Neat is just I think they're doing great things. They're doing great products. And I totally got this one wrong. I predicted that when HP bought Poly, that Neat was going to be in trouble, and that how can little old Neat compete with giant HP? Boy, did I get that one 180 degrees wrong. And so I think Neat is flourishing, probably large thanks to HP buying Poly. But just it's great to watch the just fantastic story there.
Yeah, I don't know that I would even criticize you as much as I like doing that around getting that one wrong, as much as I would criticize HP for them getting the whole I mean, botched is the best word to use there around what happened
We're
with
already
Pop.
in the ends with Neat. We kind of skipped HP, and maybe we did skip it. I can't imagine they're going to have anything significant. So I don't, that'll be the show shocker if they do. Um, who's after Neat?
So coming after Neat, we have Nurevo, which has got a couple of really interesting things at least. We know coming out. One is we've been invited to an event where we're actually going to see the HDX that we've been told about for a while, set up and working, which I'm really excited about. This is the one that does not just microphone miss, but voice lift. Which I was impressed with it as a design. I've always said that you got to show it to me working, so they're going to show it to me working in Barcelona. I think that's really exciting. A little
I,
more delayed from what they thought, but they're going to have it.
For a company that is so good at picking up speech, they're so quiet. Such a quiet company. They hardly ever make any big noise, but they are just so good at this, and their products are just amazing. And so I love seeing Nariva, and I always feel they always give me I don't know. They're like the NASA scientist of our industry. They're just uh, so in tune to how audio works in a meeting. It's just amazing. So
Yeah, and they have already pre-announced that they're taking some of the capabilities of their HDL 410, which involves camera switching and some matrix capabilities and output, and they're moving it down into their smaller 310. So that was an announcement that they made already, which again that's more evolution than revolution, but it's really good, and it's going to open up the ability to use that in some bundles, which I know are going to be announced at the show by some of their partners. So they do have a lot of really cool things going on.
that brings us to QSIS.
That brings
I
us
think
to
that was
Q-SIS.
the biggest booth that we attended last year at ISE, and really
Now,
interesting
I'm
company.
not sure what we're going to get out of QSIS this year. They just had one of their Activate events, and they announced, some new cameras and a new core and some new things. But the QSIS a couple of years ago had been purchased by Acuity, and they're in the middle of moving that absorption along. So I don't know if they're going to have as big a presence or as big a news. I guess the reason they're on our list is because we want to see that and figure it out. I'm not sure what the story is there. I know they've still got some amazing people. Chris Janes and some of their other folks are doing some interesting, future developments. We've even sat in on some of their whisper suites where they are showing some future potential technology. But it'll be interesting to see what their presence is now that they're further along with that merge.
Yeah.
And then the last one that I have on my list here, and it's by far not the last one that we're going to be talking about next week or the last one at the show or anything like that. But we definitely want to mention Sony because Sony did some weird stuff last week. Sony pre-announced at the show that they've got some brand new DV-LED panels coming out, modular panels that are going to make installation of these really large walls better and easier, which is a great announcement to make, and I'm looking forward to seeing them. But then at the same time, they basically said they're getting out of the television business. Now
You
that's
know, so
that's a
Sony is one
summary.
of the
Let me
companies
be.
I highlighted in my upcoming CES report because Sony used to, be a dominant player at CES, and they kind of shriveled up and disappeared. A number of actually big brands have kind of shriveled up and disappeared at CES this year, but Sony was really surprising. And everything Sony makes is consumer electronics, but yeah, like you said, they're making less and less of them now.
Yeah, the news last week, and I want to be real careful here to say exactly what was said, is that they've reached a memorandum of understanding with the Chinese manufacturer TCL, where TCL is going to take 51% of Sony's consumer display and audio systems, and Sony's going to own 49% of that joint venture. And okay, 5149, whatever the memorandum says, whatever lipstick they're putting on it, it's basically selling their brands to a Chinese manufacturer and essentially
Well,
getting
not
on.
their brands, their tech. I mean, really, because the brand is going to be TCL on there, and TCL is nailing it with Costco and the lower the cheap ways to market, and that's where we are with TVs right now. I mean, the TVs are just getting so cheap and bigger and faster, bigger, cheaper and thinner. So yeah, Sony's got better things to do.
Yeah,
But
and again, it's an end of an era because when you used to talk about Sony displays and Bravia,
Trinitron,
Trinitron. Sony had the first OLED display that was ever out. It was a smaller one. It was for broadcast, like a 20-inch, and then they gave up on the space. And then suddenly you saw the Korean manufacturers doing large OLED displays. And so, I can't tell you over my career, going past 4 decades, how many times Sony could have owned a specific category, whether it was collaboration or consumer audio or displays or whatever. And they've essentially, for whatever reason, one or another, just basically said end of an era here. They're going to give their brand. They're going to be these things are going to be branded Sony and Sony Bravia on top of TCL manufactured displays, and the release says that they're going to use the Sony electronics on top of it, and it's like, yeah, okay, sure. I don't know how much there's a difference there's going to be between a
yeah,
TCL TV and a
yeah.
Sony TV, but
But the Sony
big
story
deal.
isn't that different than a lot of the Japanese big tech giants, and we've seen just a lot of these Japanese companies from NEC to even the car making companies that that once just own these sectors are really having a tough time competing against China in particular. But yeah, I mean it's those Japanese brands are just not as powerful as they used to be.
Okay. So next I see you, we will be in Barcelona. The next time this is on, we're going to have obviously put a show on Monday next week, and I'm not exactly sure what's going to be on it because I will be in Barcelona. Maybe I'll just show you where I shop for bottled water and all the rest of the stuff. But one way or another, I'll stick something on the air, and then the following week we'll start with revealing our pick hits and giving updates as to everything that's going on. I think it's going to be an exciting, exhausting week.
And loving it.
And loving it. And then when we get home the following month, we're back at the new Enterprise Connect, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. Thanks for joining me for this one, Dave. It's good chat.
Always.
Thank you guys for watching. We appreciate it, and we will see you next week. Take care.